messages and then my microphone was turned off, but I managed to turn it back on.
Okay. So we hear you. I'm gonna see in a moment if we see you. And it could be that my secretary has been forgetting to send out the emails.
Okay. Well, it's the
That
second
is,
week in a row, but I just chimed in anyway.
yeah, let me see, because I don't, um, let me see my messages. Um, no, let me just ask her. Okay. Well, anyways, we're here, and wonderful morning to everyone. Brett, we hear you, but we don't see you. Good morning, Zalman.
Morning.
Good morning, Joan and Susie. And here we are. Does everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Oops.
It says has started screen sharing.
Oh. What about now? You see it
Yeah.
now?
Now we got it.
Beautiful. Okie dokie. So we were in the middle of something. Okay. Talking about the traveler's prayer. Let's start actually with the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu al divrei Torah.
How can I get my screen to be larger so I can see it?
That is a good question.
Do
Maybe
you know,
do you
Steve?
see me in big and your screen in small?
Right.
Okay, so click once on the screen and then it should switch between me and the screen.
Okay, now it's okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. The Gemara now discusses specific details pertaining to the prayer. Last week we introduced the prayer, the traveler's prayer, as well as we discussed some of the terminology that's used there. And now we're going to discuss more specific details pertaining to this prayer. When does one make this prayer? Rabbi Yaakov said that Rav Chisda said from when one sets out on his journey and not before. And how long must the journey be in order to require him to recite this prayer? Rabbi Yaakov said that Rabbi Chisda said at least a parasang, which is about 2 miles. That's what we discussed last week about when do you say this while you're on the airplane. How does he recite this prayer? Rav Chisda said only while standing in one place. You have to stop and stand to make the prayer. Rav Shesha said even walking or sitting, you can just say the prayer however you are. So in an airplane, while the engines are revving, you definitely do not be standing. That much I can tell you. The Gemara relates. Rav Chisda, who's the one who said that you have to be standing in one place, and Rav Shesha said that you could walk. So the Gemara tells a story about the two of them who were walking along the path. Rav Chisda stood and recited the traveler's prayer. Rav Sheshes was blind and didn't see what Rav Chisda was doing, so Rav Sheshet asked his servant, "What is Rav Chisda doing now?" His servant said to him, "He is standing and praying." Rav Shesha said to his servant, "Stand me up as well, and I will pray." Even though Rav Sheshes held that there is no need to stand during this prayer, nevertheless, from being good, do not be called wicked. In other words, one should do better if he is able, right? If good is better, not better. Rav Shesha said that one is not required to stop and stand. He didn't say that it is preferable to walk or sit. Since standing in this case required no special effort on his part, Rav Chisda had stopped to stand to pray anyways. Why insist on sitting? So he stood up. Okay. In the Mishnah, we spoke about two different kinds of prayers. We spoke about one kind of prayer, which is that if you're in a dangerous situation, you make a short prayer. And we spoke about another prayer, which is just in general, if you don't know how to say the long prayer, you can say the short prayer instead. So the question is, the Gemara asks, what is the practical halachic difference between the abridged prayer of grant us understanding, which is said as a blessing in between the first three and the last three, and the brief prayer recited in times of danger? The Gemara answers, one who recites grant us understanding, which is an abridged version of each of the help me out here. How many intermediary blessings do we have? If we have 18 blessings minus 6, the 12. Intermediate blessings, or the 13, and grant us understanding is an abridged version of each one of those. But you would be required to recite the first three blessings and the last three blessings of the Amida prayer. And when he reaches his home, he need not pray again. However, one who recites the brief prayer need recite neither the first three blessings nor the last three blessings of the Amida prayer. However, when he reaches home, if it's still time to pray, he must pray again. Grant us understanding has the legal status, halachic legal status, of the Amida prayer, despite its brevity, while the brief prayer is merely recited in place of the Amida prayer in exigent, is it exigent or exigent?
Excision.
Exigent circumstances. Okay. The halacha is, grant us understanding, as mentioned above, has the legal status of the Amida prayer and must therefore be recited while standing. The brief prayer, since it does not have that status, may be recited whether one is standing or whether one is walking, and in a place of danger, a person would probably not be stopping. We learned in the Mishnah, back to the topic of which direction do you face when you're praying your prayers. We learned in the Mishnah, one who is riding on a donkey should dismount and pray. Only in exigent circumstances may he pray while riding, focusing his heart toward Jerusalem and the Holy of Holies. The sages taught in the Tosefta, one who was riding on his donkey, what is the best way to do things? And the time for prayer arrived. If he has someone to hold onto the donkey, he should dismount and pray. If not, he should sit in his place atop the donkey and pray. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says, in any case, whether or not there is someone to hold onto the donkey, he should sit in his place atop the donkey and pray. Because his mind will not be calm. He's going to be wondering, is that guy doing a good job? What happens if the donkey bites him or kicks him and runs away? So he's not going to be focusing on his prayers. So yes, it's important to face the right direction. But the reason why we're facing the right direction is to help us pray. And if he's going to be able to concentrate better while he's on top of his donkey than while he's standing next to his donkey, better he should stay on top of the donkey. Since he is hurrying to arrive at his destination, the need to dismount the donkey, stand in prayer, and remount the donkey would delay his journey, and the delay is likely to interfere with his concentration during prayer. Rava, and some say Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, the halacha here is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, that even if you do have someone who could technically hold your donkey for you, you can continue to pray while you're atop your donkey.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
you can't hold the donkey yourself.
Someone's asking a good question. Does anybody have an answer?
You sit on the donkey. If you hold the donkey, it could bite you, and it's taking away your attention from the prayer.
Well, presumably it's your donkey, so it won't bite you. Tame.
It's a good question. My guess is that if you're holding on to the donkey, then you have to be watching out that it's not going to run away. You have to be holding it, and it's going to diminish your concentration, just as if you were riding it. That's my guess.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
is any of this like translated modern day? Say you're driving the car and you pull over then and pray?
Yeah. Exactly. So when we were, I wasn't sure whether to bring this up or not, but when we were kids, when we would be driving on long trips, we would stop at a rest stop or a gas station, and we would all first have a cookie to eat. We'll make the before blessing and the after blessing on the cookie. I'll explain that maybe a different time why we did that before we said the traveler's prayer. And then we would all say, wait, did we stand? For the traveler's prayer, it could be we used to say it while driving, but when it came time for the morning prayers, the afternoon prayers, or the evening prayers, if we were driving, we would pull off to a rest stop and pray, and then get back in the car and continue driving.
Okay.
But if you have a Tesla on autopilot, is that considered someone else holding your donkey?
Yeah, Elon Musk.
Maybe.
Yeah, the
Maybe a
guy's a
Tesla on
donkey, all right.
autopilot. Sorry?
I'll
Guy
say,
is a donkey.
we're not allowed to talk about politics.
There we
Okay.
go. Thank
So I
you.
can't say he's an ass.
You've already said it, and I agree.
By the way, what if you have a horse? Rule for a horse, same as the donkey?
Yeah, I would say the horse would have the same rules as a donkey. And I guess this is in a place where you can't tie it to a tree.
Right. You know, with all this praying, how do they have time to do anything else?
Don't worry, we're in the tractate of prayer. When we get to the tractate of plowing, you're gonna ask if they were always plowing. When did they have time to pray? But they figured it out. That's a good question. Yeah. The sages taught in a Tosefta, a blind person and one who is unable to approximate the directions and therefore is unable to face in Jerusalem in order to pray, may focus his heart towards his Father in heaven, as it is stated, and they shall pray to the Lord.
I didn't know Kings was part of the Old Testament.
I didn't know that there was Kings that was part of the New Testament.
Well, they're saying Kings, and I never saw Kings in the.
There's Kings 1 and Kings 2.
Where are they?
About the Jewish kings in the 24 books of scripture that we were discussing on Friday night. So Kings 1 and Kings 2, Kings 1 begins with Samuel the prophet and King Saul, and then it goes on throughout the Jewish kings and the things that happened there.
Okay.
Some very interesting and wonderful and wondrous and very sad stories in there.
Thank you.
Sure. One who was standing in prayer in the diaspora should focus his heart towards Eretz Israel, as it is stated, and they shall pray to you by way of their land which you have given to their fathers. One who
If
was
you're in
standing in
Israel, Rabbi, if you're
Sorry?
if you're in Israel, which direction do you pray? Face?
Very good. One who is standing in Eretz Israel should focus his heart toward Jerusalem,
And if you're in Jerusalem?
as it is stated, and they shall pray to the Lord by way of the city that you have chosen. One who is standing in Jerusalem should face his heart towards the temple, as it is stated, and they shall pray towards his house.
Right.
One who is standing in the temple should focus his heart toward the Holy of Holies, as it is stated, and they shall pray toward this place. One who was standing inside the Holy of Holies. Who would be standing inside the Holy of Holies?
The high priest.
The high priest. Who else?
Anyone else? I thought only the high priest.
Very good. You're right. Only the high priest was allowed to go in. There's something else that I'm going to talk about in a minute. One who is standing in the Holy of Holies should focus his heart toward the seat of the ark cover. Atop the ark, the dwelling place of God's glory. Should look at the ark of the covenant. But what happens if you're standing on the other side? One who is standing behind the seat of the ark cover. This is in Hebrew. Okay. should visualize himself as if standing before the ark cover and turn towards it. Consequently, one standing in prayer in the east turns to face west. One standing in the west turns to face east. One standing in the south turns to face north, and one standing in the north turns to face south. All of the people of Israel find themselves focusing their heart towards one place, the Holy of Holies in the temple. Now, let me ask you, why would anybody be on the other side of the ark? The high priest didn't go around about. So there were construction workers who would go into the Holy of Holies. And there's a whole fancy way of how they did it. Let me see if I can pull up the Mishnah real quick and we can read it. How did they fix the Holy of Holies? How was the Holy of Holies cleaned? I am not a robot. I used to think that it was our love and our ability to understand emotion that made us human. Apparently, it's our ability to select which ones are stairs.
I thought you were going to say I used to be a robot.
Right, exactly. Here's the Mishnah. Okay. So someone asked this question on Reddit, and they pulled up the Mishnah here. Okay. There was a winding walkway that went up from the northeast corner to the northwest corner. So on top of the building was huge building, and there were 3 stories of chambers that went around through the thickness of the wall. So there was a winding walkway that went from the northeast corner to the northwest corner, by which they used to go up to the roof of the cell. One would ascend the Masiba facing west, traversing the whole northern side, etc. Okay. There were trapdoors. I don't know if you can read this here. There were trapdoors. You see where I have highlighted?
Yeah.
There were trapdoors in the upper chamber, opening into the Holy of Holies, by which workmen were let down in baskets, so that they should not feast their eyes on the Holy of Holies. So they were in these kind of like, sometimes they have those swings which have like a back to it, like a rocking chair almost swing kind of thing.
Yeah.
I remember
So
that.
they would be in this kind of box that they would only be able to see the wall and work on the walls without being able to see behind them into the Holy of Holies. So it was a pretty cool system, and that is correct. So if one of those guys was working there during construction and the time for prayer arose, then I guess he would turn and face the ark, even though he couldn't see it because of the basket that he was in. But he would turn around and face the ark. An allusion to this is found in what Rabbi Avin, and some say it was Rabbi Avina, said. What verse alludes to this? Your neck is like the Tower of David, built with turrets. 1,000 shields hang from it, all of the armor of the mighty. He interprets the word as Talpiot, the hill towards which all mouths turn, which is the Temple Mount. So, whichever he's reading is saying that King David has this hill where all mouths turn, that no matter what side of the hill you're facing, you turn towards the Temple Mount. With regard to prayer while traveling, the Gemara relates a story when Shmuel's father and Levi wanted to set out on a journey in the morning. They would pray early before sunrise. When, during their journey, the time to recite Shema would arrive, then they would recite Shema. The Gemara asks, who said that this is an okay thing? Right? In accordance with whose opinion did they do this? We learned that you're supposed to say Shema with sunrise and afterwards say your prayer. So how could they say their prayer before sunrise? In accordance with this Tana, as it was taught in the Tosefta, one who rose early to set out on his path before the time to recite Shema arrived, they could bring him a shofar and he could sound it if it was Rosh Hashanah. A lulav, and he takes it on Sukkot, a Megillah, the scroll of Esther, and could read it on Purim. And when the time comes to recite the Shema, he recites it. So too, one who rose early to sit in a wagon or a boat prays because he's scared that when he's in the water, he might get motion sickness, or there might be heavy traffic with his wagon that he's going to have to figure out. And when the time comes to recite the Shema, he recites it. Now, there is a minimum earliness to how early you could do this. If it's still nighttime, you can't do that. However, if it is already after dawn, you may recite the prayers. So this is after dawn, before sunrise. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, in either case, even if you're going to be praying before sunrise, don't say the prayer before the Shema. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, in either case, it is preferable to recite Shema and then pray the Amidah prayer in the wagon, so that he will juxtapose redemption and prayer. Like we learned that the blessing before the prayer after the Shema is the blessing of redemption. And we want to have our prayer directly after the blessing of redemption. Therefore, the preferable thing to do is to say Shema early, even though it's not yet sunrise, but say Shema. I actually have this problem every day at certain times of the year. For example, right now, I pray with a minyan in the morning that begins at 6:30 a.m. They call it the 6:30 minyan. The problem is that sunrise these days is closer to 7. So that's what we do. We say the Shema before sunrise.
Why not just start praying at sunrise by 6:30?
So that's a good question. The answer is that I need to get my kids to school. And once the kids are already in school, once I get back at from getting them ready and taking them to school, it's usually about 9 o'clock. And at that point, I'm not in a mind after sitting for an hour and a half in traffic. I don't have the headspace for prayer. That's a good question, and it may be a better way to do things. Practically, I've seen by myself that when I pray first thing when I wake up, it's a much better prayer than after doing some errands and chores and definitely sitting in traffic.
You said your children go to school in Miami. So do you say the prayer for a journey when you go there?
That's a good question. I don't, because there's houses all the way along. She's in Miami Gardens, so I take the turnpike till exit 2X, like right past where it goes for Homestead. So we're going first through Sunrise and Plantation. Then it gets into Davie, but there's houses on the side of the highway all the way along.
Reason I ask is because the way I interpret it is that when they say 2 miles or whatever, I'm interpreting that is a journey is when you leave your village.
Right, but the question is, what's considered your village?
Right, exactly. Now I was thinking that Broward County is a village, but then on second thought, you could consider South Florida, all of the Miami metropolitan
The
area to
metro,
be,
yeah.
yeah, to be your village.
I think it's time for them to update that. If you look at there's the South Florida metro area or something like that.
Miami metropolitan area,
Exactly. And the
which
definition
includes
of
all
it
three
is that,
counties.
yeah, the definition of that officially is that you can get from one place to another within 2 hours. I think they
Uh,
should update that. But yeah, the whole place has become it has different names, but it's all really become one inhabited place. However, if you were going to go to Naples through Alligator Alley, right, I would suggest that
that
I
definitely is a
don't think there are
journey,
houses the whole way there.
and it's not part of the metropolitan area. I mean, it's definitely not in your village.
Right. And
Yeah,
on the way to Orlando, right? So at a certain
yeah.
point when there's no more houses and there's just farmland all around, that's when you've left the city. Don't tell the mayor that I said that they're not really the mayor of the city.
I think it is it this. I think it's like commercial, like a commercial center. Like Miami is the commercial center, and you live in an area like Broward or Palm Beach that serves that commercial area.
Could be.
Yeah.
So we'll get into more details, I think, about the traveler's prayer. But same thing is with Shabbos, right? You can walk outside of the village. You can walk 2,000 amos, 2,000 cubits, which is about 6,000 feet. I don't know how many miles that is.
A
About a
little
mile,
over 1 mile.
about a mile. So you can walk outside of the city. So you can walk the entire city plus 2,000 cubits, which is
A
about a
mile
mile.
is 5,280 feet.
Okay, so 1.2 miles approximately outside the city. Um,
Is that the reason the Hasidic in New York put up that wire all
the wire.
around?
So the wire is so that they can push their strollers and carry. That makes basically everything like one courtyard. Is you're putting up a fence. So there's many details about that wire to make it a kosher fence. But yeah, they're putting up a fence so that within the fence they can carry. So from here, you can walk. I mean, you can walk until you can't walk anymore on Shabbos, and you still would not have got to the edge of the houses because it's from the edge of the city, meaning the edge of the houses. So originally, it was a few different cities that maybe you would not have been allowed to walk to each other on Shabbos. But today, you can probably walk from here to Weston without going in any area that is void of houses. Didn't used to be like that.
Well, you have to cross the highway.
Right, true. But I'm saying, well, Weston used to be part of unincorporated Fort Lauderdale. And this is not even too long ago. Boca used to be farms. Okay, so the question is, we had two opinions over here. One of them was you say the prayer while you're standing in your house and then you go. And when the time for Shema comes, you say Shema. The other one says, no, say Shema before your prayers, even though you're praying before sunrise. So the Gemara explains regarding what do they disagree. The Gemara answers. The first Tana holds that prayer while standing is preferable. Therefore, one should pray earlier at home while standing. In this sage, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar holds that the juxtaposition of redemption and prayer is preferable, even if in doing so one is unable to stand while praying. So I misunderstood. I thought that he was saying that you should say the Shema at home as well, together with your prayer. That's not what he was saying. What he was saying was better pray sitting down after sunrise, after you said Shema, than to pray at home standing. On a similar note, the Gemara cites additional circumstances where sages were forced to make exceptional arrangements to pray. Maremar and Marzutra would gather 10 people on Shabbos of the festival. And then they would pray. So if there was a Shabbos that was on Pesach or a Shabbos that was on Sukkot, they would first get 10 people in their house, I guess, and then they would go out to deliver their lecture. Because the crowds, interesting. Huh, that's very interesting. So Rashi says over here that the Shabbos before Passover and the Shabbos before Shavuos and the Shabbos before Sukkot, Maremar and Marzutra, each in their respective cities, they were the ones who would speak and tell everybody what are the laws of the holiday. And in the morning, everyone would come to the shul, and when it came time to say the Shema, everybody would say Shema, and then the man would give his speech, the rabbi would give his speech, and after his speech, everybody would leave and pray at home. They had already been in shul for too long. They didn't stay for prayers afterwards, they just all left. So because he wanted to pray with a minyan, he wanted to daven with a minyan, so he would make sure to have a minyan in his house before he went, and that way It reminds me of the story of the rabbi who's praying Yom Kippur. He starts with a minyan, and after 2 hours, right, he turns around, he sees nobody's left anymore, right? So it was that kind of a situation where, so therefore they would pray with 10 people before they would go to the shul, and they would say Shema and they would pray, and then they would go out to give their speech. In similar circumstances, Rav Ashi would pray with the congregation individually while seated. So everyone else was listening to the speech. He would be sitting and praying. He didn't want them to notice that he was praying, so he sat while he was praying. That way people shouldn't realize that he's praying. And then when he would get to it, so that way he would be able to pray in the correct time. And afterwards, when he would come home, he would pray again while standing in order that he could pray without distraction. The sages said to him, the master should do as Maremer and Mazitra do. Why don't you get a minyan in your house to pray before the lecture? He said to them, it is burdensome to me to delay the lecture so much. I don't want to push off the lecture and everybody should be waiting until I get to shul because I was davening first at home. So then the sages said to him, the master should do as Shmuel's father and Levi did. Why don't you pray before sunrise? He said to them, I have not seen sages older than us doing it. I didn't see any of the old sages praying before sunrise, meaning this is not acceptable to do, to pray before sunrise. I haven't seen it done. Tradition. Mishnah. New Mishnah, new concept. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, the additional prayer, the musaf that we add on Shabbos and on holidays and on festivals and on Rosh Chodesh, the new moon, is only required in a city, is only recited in a city where you have a minyan, a chever. The rabbis say one may recite the additional prayer with a chever or without a chever. And Rabbi Yehuda said another opinion in the name of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Any place where there is a minyan, the individual is exempt from reciting the additional prayer.
What's an ever?
A chever is I don't know why they use the word chever but what it means is a minyan, a quorum of 10 men.
Okay.
So we have Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah who says that the additional prayer is only recited in a city where you have a minyan. The rabbis say that it doesn't matter whether you have a minyan or not. And Rabbi Yehuda said, in the name of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, that if there is a minyan, the individual is exempt from the additional prayer. So what's the difference between the first opinion and the last opinion? Both seems to be saying that if you're by yourself without a minyan, you don't say the additional prayer, but we'll see what happens. Oh, that's going to be the first question of the Gemara. L'chaim, l'chaim. Says the Gemara, there is no apparent difference between the opinion of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah and the opinion cited in his name by Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara asks, Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is identical to the opinion of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah cited by the first Tano. The Gemara answers, there is a difference. Does anybody want to tell me what the difference might be? Let's look back at the Mishnah. I want to see if anyone can figure out what's the difference between the first opinion and the third opinion. Okay, let me ask you some questions and we'll see if we can figure this out on our own. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, the first part of the Mishnah, right? There's three opinions in the Mishnah. The first opinion here. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says that the additional prayer is only recited in a city where there is a minyan. Okay. So if the city has a minyan, but you're not part of that minyan, do you have to say it or not?
Repeat that. If the city has a minion,
If the city has a minyan, but you're davening at home, if you're praying at home, but there is a minyan in the city that's going to be praying in shul, according to the first opinion, do you say the additional prayer?
Yes.
And what's your proof for that?
Says the prayer is recited. I see the difference between, but the third one says you're completely exempt. So the first one and the third one are completely
Very good. So
exclusive.
they're different. The first one says that if there is a minyan in the city, then whether you're praying with the minyan or whether you're praying at home, you have to say the additional prayer. The third opinion says that if you're praying by yourself, if you're not praying with the minyan, you will never say the additional prayer, or you never have to say the additional prayer, even if there's a minyan in your city. Very good. Let's see if that's what the Gemara finds, if that's the same difference that the Gemara finds. The Gemara answers there is a practical difference. There is a practical difference between them. The case of an individual who is not in a place where there is a minyan, a chaverir. In other words, a place where there is not a minyan. Okay, maybe we learned it backwards. In other words, a place where there is no minyan. The first Tana holds that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's opinion is that the individual is exempt from reciting the additional prayer because it was only instituted to be recited with a minyan. Therefore, if there's no minyan, you don't have to say it. Rabbi Yehuda holds that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's opinion is that the individual is obligated to recite the additional prayer, as he is only exempt in a place where there is a minyan, and therefore a communal prayer leader is fulfilling his obligation. In other words, if there is a minyan in town, then you can count on the minyan fulfilling your obligation. But if there is no minyan in town, then you have to pray on your own.
Yes.
How would you know if there's a minion? I mean, if you're in
So
your
thanks.
home alone, how do you know if there's a minion across town or not?
So now we know.
I don't
That's a
think
good
the towns
question.
were that big back then.
Yeah, I'm getting both.
Fair enough.
The women knew.
The women knew.
Yeah.
I guess if there's an established shul and you can't make it to shul today for whatever reason, right? So you can assume that there's going to be a minyan in the shul. You know that they're not struggling for a minyan. You know they always have 20, 30 men.
If you're all in your house, what difference does it make whether there's a minion or not? You're not part of that minion. So what difference does it make?
Oh,
You're either part of the minion or you're not.
we're going to actually get there, and it does make a difference because we're going to learn later that the chazan, maybe we touched on this before, but the chazan, the one who is leading the prayers, can actually exempt the people who are outside of the synagogue from their obligation to pray. The way it used to work is you had people who were praying in shul and you had people who were working in the fields. The people who were working often were illiterate and unable to pray, or they were working, like we said, that a person who's working on top of the trees for someone cutting down their produce can't just take a break and start praying. He has to pray a short prayer on top of the tree and continue. But the Chazan had in mind that he would be praying on behalf of all those who are out in the field who are unable to pray.
So how far out does the Chazan's authority extend?
So how far does that extend? That's already a good question. I don't know how big the fields were back then. But that I don't know right now. I hope we'll get there. So back to our case over here. If there's a minion in your city, then you can say that your obligation has been discharged by the fact that there's a minion in your town. I guess today, right, if we're going circling back and connecting this with the discussion that we began today's lesson, I can promise you that somewhere in the Tri-County area, there's a minion every morning.
Somewhere.
And that's without a doubt. That I can promise you. Unless there's COVID or something crazy like that where people are not allowed to get together. But on a normal day, I can assure you that there is a minion.
What did
So
people do during the COVID?
lots of different things. Some people made outdoor social distance minion, and I can tell you that it is not comfortable wearing a talis and tefillin in the 80-degree heat for an hour. I can tell you that. I can tell you that firsthand. Uh,
Well, I see around here I see the Hasidim on Saturdays walking to the show in August when it's 95 in the coats.
yep, with their black coats and their
And their
talises.
hats.
Yep. At least we don't have snow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's better to walk in 95-degree weather or in -10.
I'd rather stay home. Rav Huna Bar Chinana. Oh, maybe we can finish the page today. Rav Huna Bar Chinana said that Rabbi Chia Bar Rav said that the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who said it in the name of his mentor, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. And Rav Chia Bar Oven said to him, "You have spoken well, as proven by what Shmuel said." What did he say? In all my days, I have never prayed the additional prayer as an individual. Let's give ourselves a clap on the back. We have finished page 30a. In Naharda, where there is always a prayer quorum, there's always a minyan. So he would, if he wasn't in shul, he would never daven the additional prayer because he knew that there was a minyan, except for the day that the king's army came to the city, and the sages were preoccupied and did not pray communally, and I prayed as an individual. And I was an individual who was not praying in a minyan. So because there was usually a minyan in the city, he didn't do the additional prayer because he was going with the exemption of the minyan. However, on the day that there was no minyan, he did say the prayer because there was no minyan to exempt him. And next week, we're going to see that this opinion was not universally accepted. Tomorrow, oh boy, do we have a good one tomorrow. Let me read it for you so I don't make a mistake. Where is this? Where is this? Where is this? Is this exciting? You ready? Affirmative action or natural selection? Does the Torah teach us to balance talent and social status? Lessons learned from the selection of the artisans who built the tabernacle. So it's not as big of a subject as it was some time ago, but that's going to be the subject of tomorrow's class, 11 a.m. Be there or be circle. Take care. I don't know. What does it mean, be there or be square?
Oh, to be square is like to be out of it, out of touch,
Not cool.
not cool.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. My apologies then. Take care and have a wonderful day. God bless you all.
Thank you.